Hey guys, it's Darian, and I just wanted to start off by saying that I did really enjoy this chapter. I learned a lot. Even though I took constitutional law in undergrad, I did not pay attention as much as I should have in that course because I was taking courses like drugs and crime, forensic science. I was doing my senior seminar paper on a topic that I was very passionate about and really enjoyed. So constitutional law kind of ended up at the bottom of my list of courses that I really cared about. And I wish I would have paid more attention instead of just doing what I needed to do in that course to pass and get an A. So this chapter really kind of hit home with me, I guess you could say, because in starting my undergrad career, I was a chemistry major and I minored in criminal justice. And I actually enjoyed my minor classes better, but I figured I could do more with chemistry. And I stayed as a chemistry major until about sophomore year when I took my theory of criminal law class. I read the case of Louisiana versus Kennedy, and this case just really got to me. It really showed me like the negative aspects of the world and how victims, it's hard to find out what amount of justice is good enough for a victim. That case involved the 8th Amendment, and the Supreme Court, Louisiana Supreme Court, declared that the death penalty was cruel and unusual punishment. And if you've read the case, you may disagree with it, and you also understand that the death penalty is something that's a very complicated and touchy subject, so I don't want to get into that because I'm also on the fence about that, about the death penalty as well. But that case is what, it was the catalyst of me becoming a criminal justice major and getting into this master's program and entering the criminal justice field because I realized I could make more of a difference for others being in the social sciences than I would have in the natural sciences, doing something that I just kind of was good at instead of really enjoyed and was passionate about. So I really did enjoy this chapter. And the first thing that I want to talk about also hits home with me in my current profession as a correctional officer, and it involves the 6th Amendment and a person's right to a speedy trial. And my question is, why do we not pressure the courts to act more? I just said that wrong. Why do we not pressure the courts more to act on the right to a speedy trial? I understand that there are a lot of offenders. Jails are overcrowded, that the courts have a lot on their plate. At our court, we have general sessions, we have criminal court that alternates between all the different courts in our district. We have drug court, we have child support court. I get it, there's a lot that's going on, but I've also seen where the court has kind of failed those in the corrections in our correctional facility. We have had people had their court dates just for general sessions postponed and postponed and postponed, to where we have people that were supposed to go to general sessions in December that have just went within the past 2 weeks. I had an inmate ask me the other day, or a couple of weeks ago, hey, when's my court date? I bring them a court date and tell them, oh, it's next Tuesday, you'll go to general sessions with everybody else. And then luckily I'm off on Tuesdays, which is our general session day, thank goodness. And I'll come back from my off days and be like, oh, how'd your court date go? Like, what was the verdict? How long are you staying here with us? Or because they're still there. And I actually had this inmate tell me, I didn't go. And I was like, and that is where I have an issue with the court system. They give us these court dates, they give inmates court dates, and then they don't uphold the fact that they assigned that date to an individual and didn't bring them to court when they could have possibly been released. They could have possibly have been, sentenced, like, hey, you 2 more weeks and you're out. So that's my issue with it, because at one point when I first started, our jail was over 300 I think we had about 320, and our jail's capacity is only 170. Luckily, the sheriff got onto the county commission and was like, we cannot keep doing this. We are way too overcrowded. Something needs to happen. And they got onto the courts. We got a lot of people into the court. We got a lot of people sentenced to prison. We did a lot of prison runs, and we were able to get a lot of people released just because they had fallen so far behind on their dockets. There was one day it got postponed because of snow that never even came, and the judge and everyone was already at the courthouse, and they canceled it and left. So that's kind of my issue, but I also understand that there's a lot of things that we don't see that happen at the courts that possibly are the reason that all this gets postponed, put off, but the people that are in the jail, they're still people, they're still humans, they still have the right to a speedy trial. And when we have people that have been there for over 2 years who still haven't been sent to court, to me that's an issue. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is the highlight issue box. I think that's what it's called. The issue highlight box about the Fourth Amendment and unreasonable search and seizure, or reasonable search and seizure. So I do really like this amendment, and I appreciate it because it's what stands in the way of, I think it's the only amendment that refers to police and individuals. And it's important because we need to make sure that officers are doing their jobs. And it goes the same for us in corrections. We need to make sure that we are also doing our job correctly. And that's why I'm grateful that there is the exclusionary rule. Because if an officer can't do their job correctly, then we don't need to put that off on an individual because someone else couldn't do their job. But I also understand that it's frustrating because even though we have more of a right to search and seizure as correctional officers, once we take someone in and they do get sent to the back, they lose a lot of their rights when they officially become an inmate. So once they get back into our pod, we can search anything and we can seize anything from them. But when they first come in, they're a new intake. They are not officially an inmate. And we will have road officers come in, and we need to have better communication with our road officers, and I'm guilty of it as well, and I have been trying to do better. But when we first get a new intake, we have to ask them things such as, do you have any drugs on you, any drug paraphernalia, any weapons, anything that could be used to harm anyone in this facility. But those questions aren't the issue. A lot of times the issue with search and seizure in correctional facilities is when it comes to their property. Because we have some road officers, they are great at their jobs. They have already searched. If someone has 4 bags, they've searched every single one of those bags, have bagged up any kind of drugs, any weapons. They've done their job correctly. And we know, when they come in, we are not going to have to ask, do you have anything in your property? And this mainly happens when we have new correctional officers come in, and I'm guilty of it, is someone will have property, and it's your first time on your own getting a new inmate in. And the road officers will have their bags, and they'll be like, here's her bags, here's his bags. And they will either just carry them straight through, which oftentimes is what happens. It's rare that we'll have someone, sit the bags with us, but most of the time they take them straight into intake. And a lot of times they don't tell us, hey, I already searched this, everything's already bagged up. It's typically we end up searching the bags in the jail. Well, a lot of times we, as correctional officers, are guilty of not asking, do you have any drugs in your property? Do you have any weapons in your property? And because we do not ask those questions all the time, if we go and we search their bags and a road officer hasn't searched their bags and we find something, in my county, meth is a huge problem. We find a lot of it. And we find ice in someone's bag because we didn't ask, do you have any drugs in your property? A lot of times we are not able to charge them with introduction, but we also have to call whatever department arrested that person, because it's like, hey, they had this in their bag. Did you search them? And do you want to charge them with simple possession? A lot of times that answer is no, we don't want to charge, because both officers understand, like, we didn't do our job correctly. That person isn't going to be charged with it because we didn't catch it. And that's something that we do need to do better as officers. And I'm still learning. I'm getting better. I now know what to ask and what I'm supposed to do. But that is why we have the Fourth Amendment, is to make sure that stuff like that doesn't happen. And there are great officers in the world, and there are also corrupt officers. So we want to make sure that there's at least something there that helps establish a boundary between officers and individuals. So that's my little discussion on the highlight issue. It, like Dr. Edwards said, it wasn't really like a debatable one, but I did particularly enjoy it because it did relate a little bit to the profession that I'm currently in. And kind of my opinion on this chapter before I go is that we need to know our amendments better, because I know on social media we see a lot of stuff, particularly in the South, about things such as the Second Amendment and the First Amendment. And we see a lot of people who don't really understand the separation of church and state policy. And I'm not bashing that. I'm just saying, like, we need to have a better understanding of what our country was founded on and what these rights, what the Bill of Rights apply to, and how we need to uphold them. So, and us being criminal justice professionals need to do a better job of knowing them, because then we will be able to educate others to where we can have a better understanding of each other and our viewpoints, but it's going to be more in an educational way instead of just straight opinions. So I don't really like video discussions, so if I rambled too much, I'm sorry, and I hope everyone is still doing great this semester. Thank you.